Hello and welcome. You found us. We are Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast that aims to make wine tasty, fun, and approachable. I am Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orland, and we are super excited today to have a fabulous up-and-coming winemaker from the Santa Cruz Mountains. Now, our guest, Ryan Alfaro, is part of Alfaro family Vineyards, and they've been around for several years in the Santa Cruz Mountains in the little town of Corralitos, which is in the southern part of the Appalachian. But we're going to get to know Ryan and have some fun today.
Yeah. So Ryan, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we're super happy to have you here today. Why don't we start out by having you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know that something I'm super interested in is the fact that you went to the University of Auckland in New Zealand.
Yes, that's correct. Well, thank you for having me. Like Mary said, I am Ryan Alfaro, and technically I am second generation winemaker here at Alfaro Family Vineyards, although my father and mother are still very active and involved in the winery and business side of it as a whole. So I did go to University of Auckland. Is that where you would like me to start?
You get to start wherever you want.
Oh,
you can take us way back.
Well, yeah, I grew up on the vineyard, which I think is a pretty important place to start. And I was a victim of child labor laws through my parents picking and bottling wine at a young age, starting around 12 or 13 when I could actually pick up a bottle. I was in and out of the cellar helping my father doing that, but it wasn't till about 19 years old when I was really, involved and got to start understanding wine a little more. My parents were pretty strict about the underage drinking laws, and they didn't really like me drinking. But at 19, when I showed a little more interest in wine, they started sharing their cellar with me, and they do have quite an impressive cellar. So that started to open my eyes to, how wine is different all among the world and in geographical areas, and how that's a huge part of the wine industry. So just at 19 is when I really was able to dive deep into learning about the sensory aspect of wine.
Was wine the reason you chose New Zealand for school, or was it something else?
No, yeah, absolutely wine. Well, actually at 21, I was able to do a study abroad through UC Davis, and we stayed a summer in Dijon. So I had a summer in Burgundy, which, is a dream for anyone that loves wine, especially here in Santa Cruz Mountain, where we make predominantly Pinot Noir. Some people believe that's, the birth of Pinot Noir is Burgundy, France there. So I spent the summer out there pretty much just drinking wine and eating incredible food. As a 21-year-old person learning to love wine, it was, a dream scenario to be in.
Oh, yeah. I wish I'd had that opportunity. Man,
Yeah.
that would have been, just hang out in Burgundy for a summer, not do much.
Yeah, no, it was really impressive. And at that time, the professors were really interested in, improving the sensory and evaluation of the class there. And so we really did get to taste a ton of wine from all over the region. But from there, I was enrolled at UCLA, but because it's a UC system, I was able to go to the Davis study abroads. But unfortunately, UCLA doesn't have a viticulture and enology program. But they do have an incredible soil science and environmental studies program. And that is what I partook in, which allowed me to apply for a graduate program at University of Auckland in New Zealand. And similarly to my study abroad, I thought I might as well do a long-term study abroad in New Zealand and see a whole nother part of the world, and especially a different part of the wine world, because it is drastically different down there than it is over here in the States. So that's how I found myself in New Zealand.
Hey, Ryan, and what did you find different between making wine and studying about wine in New Zealand versus California?
Yeah, well, thankfully I grew up kind of in the wine industry and got to see the business aspect and kind of how, wineries function here in the United States, just a small little glimpse of it. But in New Zealand, it's a completely different market, being that it's such a small country. Most of their wine is actually exported. I believe around 95% of their wine produced is exported to other countries. So right then and there, it's completely different than the United States. And that, for the most part, kind of shapes their whole wine industry. And from there, you have to find those small boutique wineries that, all their wine is consumed in New Zealand, and they're really getting to do some experimental things in the cellar and in the vineyards. Because, while I was there, I was told that 85% of their vineyards is still planted to Sauvignon Blanc.
Wow.
Okay.
Which is just a drastic number, because they do have a ton of vineyards there, even though it is a relatively small country. And 85% of your entire growing population is in one varietal. It's pretty astonishing. And I spoke to producers and growers there and asking if this bubble would ever burst, and they kept saying that they are going to continue planting more and more Sauvignon Blanc. So it is pretty impressive what's going on there. Although it doesn't fully cater to my ideas of how I would like the wine industry, it is impressive how, Sauvignon Blanc has reached such a large magnitude of people outside of just New Zealand.
I had no idea they were that heavily invested in Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, from a grower's perspective, it's quite a dream varietal. It's a pretty tough grape, pretty sturdy, and they are still getting a relatively premium price for the crop there. So, I think the farmers will continue to do that until the bubble pops.
Right.
But they do have some really impressive vineyards and producers down there. You just kind of have to sift through a lot of the export market production that's there.
So let's bring it back home to Corralitos, where you guys are located, and what Alfaro Vineyards is up to. And you guys, you're best known for your Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and yet you make a bunch of different varietals. Tell us, kind of give us the nutshell view of Alfaro. How do you describe yourselves?
No, absolutely. We do produce predominantly Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but for us, my father and myself, that wouldn't be as much fun as planting all these other varietals that we do. We do have Syrah, Merlot, Malbec, and Gruner Veltliner, which we were the first producers in the area to plant Gruner Veltliner. And when we did, there were only 10 acres in all of California. So from a farming side, my father, Richard, is quite the experimenter, and he has a couple things under his sleeve coming up in the next couple years that he's really interested in planting as well, some new varietals for the area.
Ooh, can you spill the beans on what those might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are looking at Cabernet Franc. That is going to happen. In the past year, we have moved to being a winery that is 100% estate. So we do now only focus on estate fruit, which just happened with the 2020 vintage. We have been discussing it for the past several years, but with 56 acres, we have a lot to handle here. So we kind of have our hands full even with just estate. So going outside, although it is fun and we really enjoyed it, it's a little smarter to do just 100% estate. So we are looking at some varietals. Cab Franc is going to happen this upcoming year, and possibly Gamay, which I am also extremely excited for.
Oh, I'm excited about both of those for you, because I love Cabernet Franc, and Gamay, which is known also as Beaujolais, is such a fabulous food-friendly wine.
Absolutely. And how we discussed, we are in this little pocket of Corralitos, and it is really a beautiful place for growing plants, specifically vineyards, just because of the climate. And it is, back in the day when my father planted Syrah here, some people were a little shocked because we are definitely on the cooler side and the cooler climate aspect, but that's kind of where we like to focus our fruit, is in the cool climate aspect and really the characteristics that vines get in the cool climate. So yeah, the Merlot and the Syrah, we don't, and Malbec for the matter, we don't have trouble getting it ripe. It does take a little more technique in the vineyard with leaf pulling and such to get it the correct amount of sunlight, but we are having, pretty easy time getting those ripe. So we thought, why not work with some Cabernet Franc?
So cool. What about like ocean influence? How are you guys? Do you get any?
Absolutely. We're only about, our vineyards are between 3 to 4 miles from the ocean, because we do have another vineyard that's not on our direct state here. It's called Trout Gulch. It's a little more in Aptos. So we
Mhm.
range about 3 to 4 miles from the ocean. So we have a huge oceanic climate influence on our vineyards. And you do see that with the morning fog, but because of the ocean wind influence, as well as being inland a tad bit, it kind of blows off by 10:30, 11 a.m.
Mhm.
But you do see it, especially in some specific sites, how mineral driven our wines are. And that's definitely a characteristic that's influenced from the ocean.
Well,
So,
you guys weren't in the way of the fires, though.
You know,
You were nowhere near that,
you know,
right?
the 2020 was a really terrible year for everyone, but especially the local wine community had some serious trouble with fires as well as heat waves. We were 30 miles or so from those fires, so thankfully we did not have trouble with that. By the time the smoke did kind of come down the coast here, it was old smoke. And recent studies have been showing it's really the fresh new smoke that produces guaiacol in the fruit, which is
Mhm.
what we test for smoke taint, or what is responsible for that smoky flavor in wine. We did have trouble with the heat waves over Labor Day weekend. We did lose about 40 tons of fruit
oh, wow.
here at our estate, which is pretty significant. That's about 20 to 25% of our production on a whole year base.
Oh, bummer. That's huge.
Some vineyards that we purchase fruit from, we were heavily influenced with smoke, and that's what kind of kickstarted, along with other things, us going 100% estate. Unfortunately, some people we work with weren't able to pick their fruit at all. That's how
Mhm.
affected they were. So as far as a year as a whole, 2020 was pretty tough on everyone. We are extremely happy with the 2020 vintage of what we did get. We produced only about half of our normal production, which is a pretty significant loss. But what we were able to work with, we are extremely happy with. And it did kind of make an easier, slow harvest in terms of the labor aspect of it, although the emotional aspect was still pretty difficult to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a bummer.
It's all about adapting. We only can't do everything, so we just have to work with what we're given.
Sure. And I think our listeners would like to know a little bit about this. I think you and your entire family, you all live on the estate property as well as your vineyard crew. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I always joke around that everyone in the business always talks about how they are a family-run winery, but that is even more so true with Alfaro Family Vineyards here. Yeah, we do all live on site in various housing. Our three full-time workers, who are all brothers, unrelated to myself, they all live on site as well. And they have worked with us for 18, 17, and 7 years, I believe.
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
we don't take interns in just because that would take away full-time work from our full-time workers. So we are pretty much a tight-knit family, which kind of made the whole quarantine situation a little easier. Living all on site, we're in our own little bubble here in Corralitos.
Well, I was going to say, so many people have commented this year, like about how being quarantined as a family, like at first it's like, this is so great. We're doing games. We're having so much time together. And it's like, this is driving me
Yeah,
crazy after a little
after the ninth month of it kind of gets a little tiring, right?
while.
For anybody.
But no, it really did make it easier for us, and not the idea of us not having interns, although it would be fun to have extra help and to teach and learn from them. It really made it a little bit safer for us, just because we are in a little bubble and we didn't have people coming in and out that we were in contact with.
Yeah. Yeah. How about getting your wine out there? What are some of the creative ways you guys have been trying to keep the sales going?
Yeah, it's been a tough year with that, and definitely all about adapting, especially because we don't know if we're open one week and close the next. So while we were open, we really had a wonderful run of Saturday weekend tastings, all by appointment, and we were doing special releases and special sales to kind of promote not only our vineyard but also to give back to our wine club members and people tasting, just because it has been a tough year. So trying to do some specials to engage interaction with us and the community. I've done a ton of the Zoom calls and Zoom tastings, which I personally love. Just I do love doing events, but of course we can't do that right now. So Zoom is or online tasting is the next best thing. So I've done several of those, as well as, the Instagram live tastings, and I've really enjoyed doing that. We ran some partnerships. We're currently running a partnership with Baker's Bacon out of Marina, California. We do believe that bacon is one of the best pairings with Pinot Noir. So heirloom clone Pinot, a wine that we make, we did a little promotion where we're pairing bacon with that. So that we're just trying to do fun things. We really do love seeing all of our locals' faces at the tasting room, and hopefully that we can have them there again soon. But right now, when we can't, we're just trying to kind of figure out fun, creative ways to get our wine out there.
Yeah, I mean, because it is such a great experience going to visit Alfaro. You all have that, really nice big outdoor patio, really great views of the vineyards, and it's always a very fun, festive atmosphere.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. We are really lucky with the property we have. It's gorgeous, and our tasting room overlooks the vineyards. And we're trying to keep it a family friendly, pet friendly tasting room. We're not really trying to go for the pretentious, stuck up atmosphere. We really want everyone to be comfortable, especially with the COVID-19 outbreak. When we were able to be open throughout this pandemic, we really focused on making sure everyone was comfortable, because we do know the comfort level differs from person to person. So yeah, we try to make everyone feel at home, and try to keep anything that is, a little abrasive or in people's face to a minimum.
I love the low-key vibe. That's important to me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And when things do open up, so folks should know that there's a must-stop destination just down the road from your winery, and I'm talking about the Corralitos Market.
Absolutely. That is one of the most famous landmarks of Corralitos, and it really is worth all of the hype. I enjoy a lot of sausage and meats from there on a weekly basis.
And my big question for you is, because the market is famous for their sausages, so do you have a favorite flavor?
I always go with the cheesy jalapeno.
That's mine.
I like that one.
I like that one.
They're famous for the cheesy Bavarian, but I do like the little zing from the jalapeno, the little bit of spice they get. But no, you really can't go wrong with anything sausage related from them. That's for sure.
And is there a particular wine pairing with the sausage?
Believe it or not, Gruner Veltliner is really a go-to with the sausage.
Okay. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I had never even heard of Gruner Veltliner until you mentioned it.
No, and
I've been doing a little search on the side, and I feel like a wine dolt for admitting that, but I want to make our listeners, if anyone else was wondering what the heck is Gruner, I was too.
No, that is really a common thing we're seeing. And my father planted that 13 years ago. And, like I said, there were only 10 acres in all of California, and we were the first and only organic certified vineyard of Gruner. So that tells you right there that really no one knows too much about the varietal, and it really is a wonder to grow in the area. It's perfect for it. But
so would you describe it for
absolutely.
us? Absolutely. Yeah, someone hasn't tasted it.
It's an Austrian varietal, and how most producers do it. It's stainless steel fermented, all neutral oak age. So it's really a zingy, zesty white wine with tons and tons of citrus and lemon zest. But what I really love about this varietal, it takes on this white pepper aspect that I really, really enjoy. So it has the zest and apple and lemon varietal characteristics, but in the back of the palate, you really get this white pepper that gives it a great texture in the mouth. And so that's why I think it still has the body to go with a sausage, but is super zesty and zingy with this acid. But it did take a couple years to really get our consumers to really understand it. Not a lot of people hear it, and they think of Gewürztraminer, which it's completely different than Gewürztraminer.
I'm gonna have to give that a try.
It really is a wonderful varietal.
Yeah, and just call it Gruner. Don't even try to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Ryan, a question I wanted to ask you also is your family got started making
Mm.
bread. And I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about that, but then also, are there any connections between bread making and winemaking?
Yeah, well, I'm sure everyone in this quarantine became a baker at one point or another. I know my girlfriend and I were baking in our kitchen. But yeah, my parents started a micro bakery in 1988 down at the metro station in Santa Cruz, and it started out more so as a brick and mortar shop where they sold pastries and bread and sandwiches. Um, for 2 years they did that, and then I believe 2 years. Then the earthquake hit and kind of destroyed all of uh, downtown Santa Cruz. So there wasn't any foot traffic. And they thought, they needed to adapt, and they adapted into a wholesale bakery. And at that point, there wasn't really any wholesale gourmet based breads. It was more so the large conglomerates like Wonder Bread and such. So they started doing that
Mm.
for a while out of the bakery in Watsonville, and then they ended up selling that in 1998, the same year my parents planted the vineyard, actually. Yeah,
Mm.
there's definitely carryover from the bread making to wine, just given you're working with yeast and feeding yeast cultures. I believe, and I believe my father thinks this as well, is kind of why he wanted to transition. Is it's winemaking slightly less of a recipe formulated based industry and more of a craftsman arts as well as agriculture. So I think, after making bread for 10 years and following the same recipes throughout most of his career in the bread industry, he wanted to transition to a little something a little more agricultural based and a little more artistic, you could say.
Sure. And also, they're both rooted in fermentation science,
Absolutely.
right?
They specialized in sourdough, and they had, 1,000 pound or 1,000 gallon vats of sourdough starter that they would feed multiple times a day. So very fermentation based, but it's, baking at 3 a.m. They're long hours. And I think they were both very happy that they were able to exit out of the bread industry when they were.
Nice.
Sure, but I'm sure during harvest, the hours might even be more intense than being a baker.
Yeah, but when you really do have the love of it, it's something else. And I
Yeah.
think it's more of a process because it's over the seasons, and over anywhere between 8 to 14 months that you're aging wine. So slightly more of a process and less of a rapid recipe that you're following every single day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But he really enjoyed it and was successful, and it allowed them to start the beautiful property that they have now.
Yeah. Does your dad or mom still bake
My
bread?
father swore to never bake bread again when he sold that bakery. He taught my fifth grade class how to bake bread, and that is the final time he ever baked bread. They both baked
Wow.
pastries, though. My mother made a wonderful coconut cake last night, actually, that she dropped off at my house, so that I had a
Oh,
half of that. But they're both involved, and they actually met in the restaurant industry down in Santa Barbara. So met running restaurants. So their whole lives they've been involved in food and wine in some unrelated form. So I think that'll never leave them. But yeah, as far as baking bread, I think my parents are done with that.
that's funny. Well, I know that Richard is quite a foodie. So I follow him on
Oh yeah.
social media, and he's always posting these images, especially when it comes to tacos and things. I'm like, oh man, I can't get that
Yeah,
where I
it's
am.
pretty impressive. He really loves food, and he is an incredible cook. So I get to reap the benefits of that.
So
Yeah.
cool. Your family sounds like so much fun. Tell me what it's like working with, is your mom also involved in the winery? What's it like working with your
Yeah,
parents?
no, my mom is definitely involved in the winery. She's been running the tasting room and wine club since inception. She has gradually beginning to phase out slightly and travel a little more, which is great because my parents work extremely hard. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
take not only the cellar winemaking load off my dad's back, but trying to run a little more of the back house and tasting room while my mother's gone. But working with my parents is wonderful. I don't think any 27-year-old man spends more time with their parents than I do. but I am really lucky to do so, and I'm learning a ton both from them in the industry as well as stuff outside of the industry. Just, they've run multiple businesses, so I'm learning about that, and I'm also learning about the winemaking side as well. And my parents, it's pretty impressive. They spend every single day sitting next to each other, and I'm not sure a lot of couples do that. So it is impressive. They really are quite the dynamic duo.
So nice. All right. So, and when you're not working at the winery and all things grape oriented, what do you like to do? What do you do for fun?
Recently, and I think this was quarantine kind of influence, but I've really gotten into cycling and biking, and I am in a wonderful area for that. Not only Corralitos, but the Santa Cruz Mountains as a whole. So I ride my bike a ton. That's kind of how I escape everything. I spend most of my days at the winery and in the vineyard trugging around just because I live on property. But yeah, so I get to mentally escape on my bicycle. So I spend a lot of time biking nowadays.
So you have several labels in
Yes,
your lineup.
you do.
Can you walk us
Absolutely,
through
and that's something we have been trying to work on over the years. I think that's kind of how my father is. He's just a maniac and all over the place, and really has some incredible ideas. So at one point, about 4 years ago, we had 30 different SKUs, and I think my mom would be the first to tell you that that's absolutely ludicrous. She is running the tasting room and wine club, and having 30 SKUs, it really makes it difficult for our salespeople and consumers just having so many SKUs. So we have tried to cut back a little bit. We're sitting, I think, around about 20 or 22 SKUs now. So we've cut back a decent amount, but mainly our family label with, I wish I was able to show the listeners, but it has a portrait of my whole family standing in the vineyard and with an old vintage truck that we have. That is all of our single vineyard estate wines. And we focus on Corralitos varietals of which we grow. And then we also have our A estate label, which is a blend of varietals and vineyards, but all of which are estate. So we do 100% Pinot, which is our blue A label, and we do Chardonnay, Syrah, Merlot, and that is our entry level wine. For those, we try to over deliver the wine for the value, and I personally think for Santa Cruz Mountain wines, those are some of the best valued wines you can get.
Nice.
And recently we've created a label under the Alfaro name still, but it is heirloom clones, and it is all a blend of 100% Pinot. But what differentiates this is that it's all old heritage clones. So Californian clones like Calera, Mount Eden, Swan. So it's more of a clone specific wine or label.
Oh, that's cool. So how available are these different bottlings?
Every wine we produce is in our online store. We sell predominantly direct, 60% out of our tasting room and wine club. And I would say about 80% of our wine is sold within about a 30-mile radius. So we are predominantly focused on the local community, but we do try to expand to small wine shops as well as restaurants in the various states amongst us. Most of our wines sell out fairly quickly, but everything is available through local shops as well as our online store.
Great. And your price points are very approachable. You've got $30 Chardonnay, a $45 Pinot Noir, some others that are more expensive, but you give people places to join you. A 6-pack of Rosé of Pinot Noir, $120. So there's, I think there's some real value in what you guys are doing and for the quality that you're producing.
No, I appreciate that. And that's really kind of our focus. I think everyone in the wine industry would love to tell you that they would enjoy making $60 Pinot Noirs and $80 Pinot Noirs, but realistically, that's just not how the industry works. And I personally think from a consumer standpoint that it's a little ridiculous. Now, I will say I have bought wines like that, and I really do enjoy that. But if you're really trying to build a brand and sell wine, I think it is appropriate to price wines that are fair price. And I think we're doing a really good job about that. We do have to make money and pay 5 full-time employees. So it is a business at the end of the day, but I think our wines are definitely over delivered for the price, especially, those estate labels that I said, those are $25 Santa Cruz Mountain Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. That's pretty impressive to get a bottle of wine that good and from this area for that price. And some of our single vineyards, they get up to $45. But once again, Santa Cruz Mountain fruit, it's pretty impressive, and it's extremely hard to farm here. So we are trying to over deliver on these wines, and we hope our customers do appreciate the price points that we are delivering.
Well, especially compared to some of the regions north of you, you don't often see prices like that, even at their
absolutely. And some of those regions up there, they make really, really impressive wine. But just some of those areas, no matter what, any wine that's produced will hit that upper tier that we are offering, just given the name that they have, but maybe not delivering on the wine. So we're trying to over deliver, like I keep saying, and that is, the backbone of our philosophy is really trying to give our customer the best wine possible at a price which, we appreciate, but they can also appreciate as well.
Well, I love that, because it makes people who haven't tried your wines, maybe, they don't feel it's as big a risk to try, especially one of the A-label wines. And then if they like that from there, they would be more willing to explore the rest of your lineup. And also it helps make it more of an everyday wine versus, only on a special occasion.
Absolutely. I agree. And those A wines that I'm discussing, they do bring people to our winery. And I think once people do sit down and taste and get to see our property, it really gives them the full idea of what we're about and what we're delivering and producing in those single vineyard sites, because they are drastically different. Although, they are close in geographical region, but they are just completely different, and they are made the exact same. So it really does give them an idea about wine. And that's kind of how I really first started getting interested in wine, when I was tasting same varietals from same regions, but they're completely different just because of location within that specific AVA.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, here's hoping that 2021 brings people back to the winery and lets us all dine and drink wine and enjoy each other's company again. But Ryan Alfaro, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today and getting to know you better. The winery is Alfaro Family Vineyards and Winery, and it's in Corralitos, as we mentioned, which is south of Santa Cruz. And you guys really do put the family in that family.
Yeah, we're trying.
Family Vineyards label.
I can't let you go without telling you a really quick story about Richard, your dad. So several years ago, probably at least 10 years ago, maybe, I was at a winemaker's dinner in Half Moon Bay, which is just north of Santa Cruz on the Northern California coast. And it must have been one of these multi-winemaker dinners where it was probably, some of his fellow wineries from Santa Cruz Mountains. Anyway, Richard wasn't even at my table, but during the course of the evening, we were, they brought out the different wine flights on big trays. And I had a light blue mohair coat. It was a cold evening, so I had that on the back of my chair. And as they were serving the red wine, of course, the server who had the full tray of red wine glasses stumbled and dumped the entire tray on me and my coat.
That's terrible.
So the coat was covered in red. So I got dried off and everything and all that. And then Richard comes over with a bottle of Lindsay Page Chardonnay and gives it to me. It's like, well, I hope it did.
Terrible thing to happen.
It was terrible. But you know what? Mary Babbitt and I learned a really cool thing that you probably know of, but I'll share with our listeners about how to get red wine stains out of anything. And it's a 50-50 mix of hydrogen peroxide and Dawn dishwashing detergent. And it has to be Dawn. There's something about the grease
Yeah.
removing
Dawn is magic.
chemical. Yeah. So when I got home, I filled up my bathtub with, half water, half hydrogen peroxide, and I just let it soak for a couple of days. And believe it or not, it took every drop
Oh,
of that
that's
wine
good.
out
And
of
I hope you
it.
enjoyed the wine that Richard did.
I did. I did. It's one. The Lindsay Page Chardonnay is one of my favorites.
No, yeah, Richard, my father is really a great man, and I think the community will back my statement up on that. He really is involved in the
Yes.
community, and I can't emphasize this enough. Not just because I'm his son, but his farming is really incredible. His knowledge out here in Santa Cruz Mountain, it's really a spectacular thing he's doing, and I am really happy I get to work with the fruit that he farms. It's pretty special what he's doing.
Yeah, it is. He knows every millimeter of that vineyard, and how to tend this area versus that area, and just everything. It really,
Yeah, he's a
it's
maniac, and I
impressive.
mean that in the utmost respect. It really is impressive, and one day I hope to learn as much of these vineyards as he knows. So.
Well, like I said, we wish you continued success, and we thank you so much for spending some time with us. If you want to taste some of their wines, we recommend, because of the pandemic, go to the website Alfaro Wines. Is it at Alfaro Family Wines?
Yes, Alfaro Family Wine. No, it's alfarowine.com.
alfarowine.com, and you can, and like, they've got these great 6-pack pricings, and so order some wine from Alfaro and get to know this fun family through their delicious wine. And then when things get better, go visit them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ryan. It's just been really fun, and we will have to come visit you once the
Please do.
pandemic is over as well.
All right, Ryan.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Cheers. Sip,
Bye.
sip, hooray.
Bye. So, Mary B., wasn't Ryan just a lot of fun? I mean, what a cool, laid-back guy. And he is definitely a winemaker to watch in the Santa Cruz Mountains and in California.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a nice guy. And I love the whole family vibe that they've got going there at Alfaro Family Vineyards. And just a super nice guy. I can't wait to be able to go to Corralitos and visit them there. I also appreciated how he didn't make me feel like an idiot for not knowing what Gruner was.
I think some of our listeners probably didn't know what it was either. So, he enlightened all of us.
Yes, you learn a little something here on Sip Sip Hooray. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed making it. And if you liked it, we hope you share it with your friends and tell them about us. We are Sip Sip Hooray Podcast, and you can find us on social media with that, and also our website, sipsiphooraypodcast.com.
Great. And if you do end up sharing this with everybody in social media, please tag us at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast.
All right. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. And we thank you for joining us on Sip Sip Hooray.
Cheers.
Cheers.